this is a good segue, I feel like, into another topic that I saw during my vacation pop up on my feed. And it was this little tweet, which went extremely viral. 1.4 million views on this tweet. Taco Smiley Face, thank you for the resub. Thank you. Welcome back. Appreciate that. And everyone else who's been subbing. It's been a lot today, so sorry that I'm not calling out every single name, but I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for coming back after my vacation with the sub support. Appreciate you. Okay. Hello, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering players. You can buy the Pokemon TCG World's Winning deck for about $30. Join us. Now, this tweet happened after the Pokemon World Championships, obviously, which happened last weekend. And apparently, I didn't fact check this. I'm just assuming this is about correct. Because I think the story checks out with what I know about Pokemon TCG prizes. The winning deck apparently only costs you like $30 in the Pokemon TCG. And this sparked a lot of discussion, honestly. And like, I saw a lot of like, there was also a lot of negativity in response to this from both the Yu-Gi-Oh! And the Magic community, which is like people took this, basically people took offense in this as if the original poster said something as like, oh, our game is better than the other games because it's cheaper. Like it's you should stop playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic and go play Pokemon now. And people reacted to that and be like, Pokemon is garbage, Pokemon is cheap because the game sucks, and whatnot. And it's just look, I get that. On the one hand, I understand that people defend their game because, let's be honest, card games are, to a lot of people, I think, more than a hobby, right? Card games are like something that you invest a lot of time and money in. Unless you're playing Pokemon, then you don't have to invest money, I guess. But like, you invest a lot of time and effort into these card games, and they can often end up being more than a hobby, right? They often define you as a person, at least to an extent. Because you make friends in those communities, you travel the world for the game, and it's just it's not something you do like every other month or something. It's something that very constantly like is present in your life, right? And so I can see why people take offense when someone implies or says or they think they say that a different card game is better than their card game. You know what I mean? On the other hand, there's really no reason in doing that, right? It's like, I understand where it's coming from, but you have to realize that there is enough card games, and if you personally enjoy your card game the most, then nothing is stopping you from just playing your card game, right? You don't have to take offense in everything, and you can just go your way without insulting a different card game just because you play. Like, because you enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh! The most does not mean everyone else has to enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh! As well. Like, it's fine. There's enough room for all of us. And the one thing that was, I think, positive about this entire thingy is that it sparked a discussion about card prices in general, which is, it's been a discussion as old as freaking Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has had this problem a lot of times. Countless times. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has had the problem of cards are very expensive, sometimes more than other times. And I wanted to take this as a little bit of an incentive to talk about just like the topic of, is Yu-Gi-Oh! Too expensive? Because it is something that is on my mind ever since I visited Japan 2 weeks ago, because it just reminded me of how crazy their rarity system is compared to ours, right? Just for context, you go into a Japanese card store and they have all the cards there, and I kept seeing so many cards that are incredible money cards for us in the TCG, and they just cost them merely a couple bucks in the OCG, right? Like, I kept seeing cards like Axis Code Talker for freaking 300 yens, which is like $2. I saw Barones for, I don't know what, I don't want to say the wrong numbers, but around like, I don't know, $5 for a Barone, probably less. all those cards, right? Countless examples of cards that are 50 plus bucks for us, or have been 50 plus bucks for us, and they would cost them just a couple bucks in the OCG. And the reason that is because the OCG has a different approach to it has a vastly different approach to how they print cards, right? Because in the TCG, for the most part, every card, if they come in a set, is printed in one rarity, right? Current main sets, I'm just going to use current main sets because that's how we get the majority of our cards. They come with commons, super rares, ultra rares, secret rares, and then you have either starlights or quarter centuries this year, but they are kind of a different topic. And then what ends up happening is if a very good card comes as a secret rare, it ends up being a chase card in the set, and it ends up being very expensive because a lot of people want the card, and there's not that many copies of the card out there because it only comes as a secret rare. So like proportionally to like other rarities, there's very, very few of the secret rares. Which ends up being cards. I mean, what's like the worst case in the last couple of years is like secret rares being upwards of, I want to say $100 is like as bad as it gets. Or I think cards that had that price point would be cards like Pot of Prosperity, Access Code Talker. Then we have other examples of like, for example, Pearl Rhino, I think hit upwards of $80. Triple Tactics Thrust hit, I want to say 70, 75. Bestial Lubellion has been sitting around 50 to 60 bucks. Now the one thing is that if you just want to make one deck, you don't have to buy all of those cards. But you need you very often you need significant portions of those cards. Like a lot of decks want the Thrust, a lot of decks want the Prosperity, a lot of decks want the Baron. There's a couple cards out there that are just between 50 and $100, and a lot of decks want at least some of them. So that makes it so that even if a deck core is cheap, we need to spend like a lot of money on the staples if we're starting from zero. And the way the OCG does it, just to come full circle, is that they just have almost every, I want to say every card, but maybe it's not every single card, but almost every card in a main set just comes in, I think it's 3 different rarities or 4 different rarities. Like almost every card comes in like a base rarity, and then they have their own version of the collector's rares, they have their own version of ultimate rares, and then sometimes they even have starlight rares. I don't know if they have starlight rares for every set, but basically the idea is almost every card comes in multiple rarities, right? Almost every card comes in multiple rarities, which ends up being like you have a cheap version of a card that has a lot of population, and then there is more exclusive, more high rare, better looking versions of a card that will fetch you more money, and that's where the value is at in the boxes, right? And this is a concept that is replicated in some other card games in Europe and NA as well. Pokemon does it in a very, very similar fashion, where Pokemon has, for most of its expensive cards, right, the holos, they have the regular card, the regular version, and they have like different high rare versions of the cards, right? They have rainbow rares, I think is what it's called. We can look at it. Give me a second. Let me hop over on. Let me just pull up Card Market. Switch to Pokemon. If I look up this thing, right? Dragonite EX. Does this not have different versions? Wait, Dragonite only has one. Okay, I picked the worst possible example. Of course. Name one that's a good example from the current set. We can look at Mew GX. Isn't that the one that won? Oh, the Charizard. Right. There was a Charizard right there. Give me a second. Wait. Charizard. Am I dumb? I'm choking. Charizard V. Okay, we can use this. We can use this as an example. I found one. All right. So this is how I remember it, right? Look at this. All of this is the same card, right? All of this is the same card. It's not the newest Charizard. It doesn't matter. It's the same concept, right? You have like the base version is this one up here, which you can see starts at €2.25. Right? €2.25. And this is the exact same card. The exact same card comes in 4 different versions. Right? This one's a promo from somewhere else, but these 3 are all from the booster set, right? This one is what they call a full art. This one is what they call a full art, and it starts from $25, and this one is freaking, I don't know what they even call this. It's like insane art. These are the insane looking ones. They are super hard to pull, I think. These are freaking insanely looking. Like, and this one starts from like $100, right? And so Pokemon, right? Pokemon still has money cards, right? The alternate arts, the freaking, like, they have high rare, really hard to pull, really expensive cards that, like, people will still open a lot of product to get those, right? People will still open a lot of product to get the differently looking cards, the hard to find cards, and it still sells really well, I think. But the people that just want to play, right? The people that just want to play the game, if this card is any good, you can just pick up this one, right? If you don't care about the looks, if you just want to play on a budget, you are not forced to pick up the €100 secret rare. You can have the cheaper version, right? And I think that is how the OCG handles it for Yu-Gi-Oh 2, and it seems to work in the OCG for Yu-Gi-Oh as well. Like, it seems to work. It seems like it's a concept that works, right? Because Pokemon TCG has been around forever. It just, for some reason, is something that the Yu-Gi-Oh TCG has not decided to do. Now, I will say, there are a couple things that Yu-Gi-Oh does better than Pokemon in a way for its card pricing. Like, for example, Yu-Gi-Oh is currently in a state where I don't know. I don't want to speak too positive about it. I don't want to speak too positive about the current, because I really don't like the rarity system of Yu-Gi-Oh, and I don't want to make it seem like I do. But the thing that costs you the most money when you play Yu-Gi-Oh, the thing that costs you by far the most money when you start playing Yu-Gi-Oh or you don't have any cards is the staples, right? It's like this is what I also noticed when I sold almost all my cards during COVID because I just didn't play, and I started getting back into it after, and like, what costs you the most money is the staples. And once you have the staples, you really don't have to spend that much if you want to make a new deck, right? Because if you look at most Yu-Gi-Oh decks, very, very often, an archetype, with the exception of like super meta archetypes, the archetypes don't really have that many expensive cards in their course. The problem is, if you are a new and beginning player and you look at a deck list from a deck, it's not only the archetype cards, right? You also need You also need talents, thrust. At some point, Evenly was expensive. Evenly's been reprinted now. But like Prosperity, Baron the Fleur, like all those cards are just like in a lot of different decks, and you can't really find one. You can't really like the entire concept of a budget deck already kind of the idea just crumbles when all of your staples are expensive in the game, right? Like when all of your staples are expensive right off the gate when they are released, because that's what they've been doing, right? That's the thing, right? When they see a staple card like Triple Tactics Thrust, they know everyone is gonna want it, so they make it a secret rare, right? And this practice is what causes this, right? It's like if they did it the other way around, it would be much easier to build a budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck, right? If they made the staples commons and then they made the archetype cards high rare, then you would have certain archetypes that have a lot of high rare cards, right? Those would be expensive then, right? Because they have, I don't know, you have like 4 secret rares in that archetype or whatever, and then like, okay, that archetype's going to be expensive. And then you have other archetypes which don't have a lot of secret rares, or maybe none. Those are not going to be as expensive because you can just pick up the archetype for cheap and you can pick up the staples for cheap, right? Because in that ideal world, the staples would not be as expensive. The problem is that they're not doing that, right? The problem is that they're not doing that. And so if you are a new player to Yu-Gi-Oh, and you don't have all the staples yet, you're looking at a barrier of entry that is incredibly high, right? And there's no real way of fixing it. Because you simply cannot play a deck without any kind of staples, right? There is no deck that can just work without all of the staples. It's not really existent, right? So it's like at the point where you are already super invested in Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Like, for example, the point that I'm at, right? Where I have all the staples that are out right now, right? I have all the staples. And so if I'm looking at, I want to get into a new deck, right? Like, I don't know. Let's say I'm looking at the newest set and I'm looking at, hey, these Unchained cards look cool. I want to build an Unchained deck, right? And then I don't know. Let me pull up an Unchained list that I have. That we built on one of the streams before Worlds. Hold up, let me see if I still have it. I still do have it, yeah. I still do have it. Okay, so let's say I already have an established collection. And I want to make an Unchained deck, right? What is money in this deck? It's Thrust, it's Prosperity, it's the talents, maybe a little bit. And then like maybe Unchained Abomination, Access Code, Zeus. All of those cards I have. Because I play Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Already actively, right? I'm already actively playing Yu-Gi-Oh, so I have those cards. So for me to get into Unchained, it doesn't take much, right? Like, okay, the spell I think is like 10, maybe 15. But that's like, you know, like maybe I'm spending 50, 60, 70, I don't know. A lot less than when you consider the deck as a whole. That's my point. It's not, I don't want to be nitpicky with the numbers. My point is that just getting into a new deck when you already have the staples in Yu-Gi-Oh is not that expensive, right? Which doesn't make it okay overall. That's, you know, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a good system, because the problem with that is that the people that already play Yu-Gi-Oh, don't have it that hard. It's not that bad once you have the collection. The problem is that it provides another barrier of entry for people, right? Because like most people that want to get into Yu-Gi-Oh, they don't have those staples available, right? They simply don't have the option to just say, hey, I'm gonna get Unchained, and the Unchained cards are really cheap, so it's not a problem, right? Because they don't have Thrust, they don't have Prosperity, they don't have Access Code, right? And now they're still looking at an investment of like, I don't know, Thrust is like 70, so that's 210. Prosperity, what is Prosperity right now? 40, 120, so that's 330, like 400 upwards. right? 400 and upwards because you don't have the staples, or you play a suboptimal deck. Which, I mean, you could argue you can start learning the deck or start playing the game without those cards. It's not gonna feel optimal, but I guess you could. You know, I guess you could play a deck without those cards in the beginning, right? You could argue maybe that's fine, right? The problem is that I think the question we have right now, the question that we should be discussing is not, is Yu-Gi-Oh fine right now the way it is? Because honestly, I think just by the numbers, Yu-Gi-Oh is doing okay, right? Yu-Gi-Oh is not doing terribly. Yu-Gi-Oh is fine right now, right? The way they're doing it is fine. It works. That's why we're all here. That's why we're all playing the game. The question that we should ask is, could it be better? Instead of being like, yo, the current system is so shit, we shouldn't be asking that question. We should be asking the question of, can we improve it? Right? And I think the answer to that is yes. I mean, you look at, and I want to point out some of the progress that we have made, and I hope that they keep doing it, because I want to point you to Duelist Nexus. Which in my mind is still, in my opinion, it's a phenomenal set. It is a phenomenal set for Yu-Gi-Oh, right? And this is where it becomes funny and freaking doesn't make any sense. Because Duelist Nexus is a set that does this for the very first time, where almost every card comes in a second rarity. Almost every every secret comes in quarter century secret rare. As a result, the most expensive card from the set is Revolution Synchron. And Revolution Synchron is $35. That is the most expensive card from Duelist Nexus if you ignore quarter century rares, which you are not forced to play. You have a cheaper alternative for every single quarter century rare, right? The most expensive card is $35. And then after that, we're looking at freaking this Chimera thing, which is $16, which I still have no idea why it's that much. But like, for the most part, everything else here is just incredibly cheap, right? Which in my book, this is one of the best sets they've made, right? This is one of the best sets they've made, period. Because this is what everyone has been asking for, right? If they keep doing this, then people are gonna be insanely happy with card prices in a while, right? The only people I see complaining about this is freaking vendors that buy the set and are complaining that it doesn't provide them as much profit as it used to for other sets, right? If it's neg for vendors, then nobody will open the set. I mean, you could sell the packs, right? Because that's how it's supposed to be, technically, right? Because the idea is that you buy the boxes and then you sell the packs. That's how it's supposed to be, technically. Selling the packs doesn't plus you though? Of course it does. You're gonna buy loose packs of Dune? I mean, look, I'm not saying you're completely wrong. I'm saying that I'm not saying that vendors shouldn't profit off the set. I don't know exactly, because I'm not a vendor. I don't have the numbers. I don't know how neg you go on Duelist Nexus. I don't think it's that bad. I think vendors are exaggerating. I don't think it's that bad. The thing is that here they are also just the problem is here, this concept is combined with a set that is just overall, the secret rares, they just picked bad secrets, right? They just picked bad secrets is the problem. They should have picked better secrets for this set. That is I think if done correctly, this can be good for both vendors and players, right? The problem with this set specifically is that freaking Evolzar Lars is a secret rare, Crystal God Tistina is a secret rare, Tokusano Shinkyojin is a secret rare, Nightmare Magician is a secret rare, and Sleipnir is a secret rare. Like, a lot of cards that people either want 0 copies or 1 copy, right? There's not that many, there's no chase secrets besides freaking Revolution Synchron, right? Every other secret you only need 1 copy of, right? If they made, for example, imagine what would have happened, imagine what could have happened if they made Power of the Elements this way, right? Imagine if they made Power of the Elements this way. You think that would have made it a non-profitable set? You're out of your mind if you think that. You're out of your mind if you think freaking Power of the Elements was going to be a bad set because of quarter century rares. There's no shot. There is no shot. Freaking Power of the Elements would have gone so hard like this. People would have wanted so many quarter secrets. The secrets would have been less expensive, right? Because of the freaking quarter century option. It would have been phenomenal, right? It's just that Duelist Nexus as a whole is not as good as of a set, especially with the secret rares that they chose. So the thing is, we will see this happen. We will see this happen. We will see this happen in a few weeks when Age of Overlord comes out. I don't know when exactly Age of Overlord drops, but I personally think Age of Overlord is gonna be a much it's just a stronger set. It's a much stronger set than Duelist Nexus, and when we get it, we will find out how this quarter century thing works in Yu-Gi-Oh, right? I have high hopes, high expectations for it. Like, I'm hoping that like really good secret rares from Age of Overlord will make it so that the quarter centuries are gonna pop off. They're gonna give the vendors a lot of value. The secret rares, ideally, I mean, look, people like cards to be cheap. People like cards to be cheap, but I don't think anyone is arguing that a freaking secret rare should be €1. Like, I think if you're saying if your opinion is a secret rare should be €1, then I think you're wrong. I think the reality is a secret rare shouldn't be $100, but a secret rare should also not be €1, right? The reality is they should be somewhere in between, right? Secret rares you only play one of should probably be between, like, I don't know, 10, 15, $20, and then really good secret rares, they can hit $30 to $40 probably. That'd be okay, right? Like, I think that's a really, really good staple secret rare, you know? I mean, make it $30, make it $40. It's all right. Don't make it 100. Don't make it 100. Right? I think it's just that the span of a card price is just too high, right? Like, you don't want a secret rare to be 100, you don't want it to be 1. So yeah, it's interesting where we're headed. I will say that something like this, an issue like this where like card prices being too high in general, it's not an issue that is gonna be fixed within a month, or it's not something that they can just make the decision to stop it right away, right? It doesn't really work like that, right? It's something that they need to change their behavior long term, right? And I think in some ways that has been happening recently. In recent years, in the last, like, 2023, 2022, there has been some efforts, I think, to reduce the overall prices of playing the game. Sometimes they failed to do so. Sometimes they have not made those decisions. Like, I'm looking at, like, I don't know, like Cash Tira or whatever. But or like thrust. Thrust honestly is like more frustrating than Kashtira. Like honestly, because like I said, I prefer if archetypal cards are expensive. I prefer it if archetypal cards are expensive over staples that are expensive, because Kashtira being expensive does not gatekeep beginners, right? Because as a beginner, you don't have to play Kashtira. You can pick a different deck, right? But like cards like Thrust, Talents, Evenly, Prosperity being expensive is very hard because it also hits all of the beginner decks, or like most of them, right? That is I think one of the levers that they can pull, is they can just make the staple cards less expensive, right? And that'll make it a lot easier for newer players. Vanquish Soul is a whole different issue. Like, the thing about Vanquish Soul, though, is no one is forced to play it, I guess, is the one positive, right? That is the one positive about Vanquish Soul, is like, no one needs to play Vanquish Soul because they're not that good. But overall, just to also get this to a conclusion, do I think Yu-Gi-Oh is too expensive? Yes. Yes, it is. I'm hopeful that it's going to change. Because I do think it is one of the problems that's gatekeeping newer players. Because like I said, once you are in the privileged position to own most of the staple cards, Yu-Gi-Oh, maintaining, like playing Yu-Gi-Oh for a long time, at some point you're gonna have a collection, and you're not gonna have to spend the entire $400 that it costs to make a deck, right? Like, you only have to get the cards you're missing, but not like beginners are not in that position, sadly. So it's a problem for beginners mainly, I think, and that is not good, because we don't want to have more problems for beginners.